Hello and welcome. So this is book club. In case you're new to book club, my name is Julie Fei-Fan Balzer, and whether you're watching live or on the replay, I want to welcome you. I hope you'll pop into the comments and say hello and give me your thoughts. We are on week 8 of The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron, and I actually found a really great summary of sort of where we are in the book online. So I'm just going to share that for a second. So this is from a website, a blog called Everleaf Designs. And basically it says that so far in weeks 1 through 7 of The Artist's Way, we've covered some foundational practices for creative recovery, specifically morning pages and the artist's date, right? Those are the foundational concepts and usually what most people think of when they think of this book. Then discuss some concepts to get us into an artist child's mindset. So these are the ideas of synchronicity, abundance, and creative luxury, all of which we have covered through book club. And then identified some larger creative blocks and how to deal with them. The virtue trap and perfectionism are examples of that. So now with week 8, instead of sort of looking backwards, we're sort of beginning to take some actionable steps, which I find exciting because I'm very into actionable steps. I like it when there's something to do. So a quick reminder about how book club works. You make book club work, especially with this book. It's really meant to be a discussion between you and me and the book. And so do chime in with your thoughts on week 8, how it's going for you, whether you've read the book, if you haven't read the book, if you love the book, if you the book has changed you, if it hasn't. I want to know all of those things. Hi, Donna. Hi, Lori. Thanks for chiming in. So I will show you my vlog for the week and then we can get to talking. So be sure to chime in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Okay, so let's do this. 8, recovering a sense of strength. So it says, this week tackles another creative block, time. You will explore the ways in which you have used your perception of time to preclude taking creative risks. You will identify immediate and practical changes you can make in your current life. You will excavate the early conditioning that may have encouraged you to settle for far less than you desire creatively. Talk about prejudicial questioning. So question number 4, as a kid, my mother taught me that my daydreaming was blank. Question 5, I remember she'd tell me to snap out of it by reminding me blank. So, right, this assumes that your mother basically taught you that daydreaming was terrible and got you to snap out of it. But you know what? My mother never did. She never said stop daydreaming. And I'm sorry if yours did, Julia Cameron, but mine didn't. Question number 9, the thing that ruined my chance to be an artist was, again, like, okay, I'm going to say something controversial. And it isn't even about God this time. I think that being an artist, a working artist, is really, really hard. Like, it's really hard and it sucks. And there's so much rejection and it is never knowing where your next paycheck is going to come from and kind of a lot of winging it. And you really have to be a business person. And like, there's just a lot about it that's like hard and icky and terrible. And I think that there's a lot of stuff in this book that's about like, yes, you can be an artist. That feels slightly irresponsible to me because it doesn't get into all of the issues of like, I would 100% say everyone is creative. I would 100% say that everyone has should absolutely have artistic expression and have an art life and all that kind of stuff. I don't think that you should, I just don't think that everyone can make a living off of writing or dancing or making art or what. Like, I think making a living at it is a separate thing from actually feeling and being creative. And I feel like this book doesn't deal with that part of it at all. So I'm really enjoying the morning pages that are a little more directed and meaning I'm setting a timer for 15 minutes. So I wrote page and a half in 15 minutes. Where I'm really focused on like thinking about my business, thinking about what I want to get done in the day, not just sort of aimless, but just sort of dumping a lot of, I guess, focused dumping. Focused dumping. That's what I'm all about. So I definitely feel like I'm in kind of what I would say like the slog of this book. It's a lot of kind of information that keeps coming up and up, not a lot of new information. I'm in the slog of it. I am once again confused by sort of what Julia Cameron promises at the beginning of the chapter. I mean, she says that this chapter is all about time, and like getting rid of those things that block your time. And Lord knows I have a lot of things that block my time, and there's some more useful ways I can think about using time, but I didn't find any of the content in the chapter to be really about like time management. It's more about like, hey, it's going to take you 5 years to get better at something, and you're going to live those 5 years whether you do or not. So do it, which is the same content that we've had elsewhere. So I don't know. I'm losing faith that the chapters actually have individual identities. Okay, time to check in. How many days this week did you do your morning pages? Have you been very tempted to abandon them? How was the experience for you? I only did them, I think, 2 times this week, but I did do a 15-minute timer instead of 3 pages. That worked a lot better for me, and I focused on writing some practical ideas and thoughts and like clearing my brain about some business stuff. And that actually felt like it took like some burden off of me. So that was great. And it made them feel really useful, which I liked. Again, I don't think that everybody has to do morning pages the same way. I think that I think I've gone over this week after week. We're now in week 8, right? But I'm trying to figure out what the point of the morning pages is. And from a lot of people, they enjoy doing them is one, people who've kept them up for a long time. They find that they clear their minds out, right? That the morning pages like are sort of a dumping place, that it's something like of a diary or a personal way of sharing your story. And so I've been trying to find my own way into doing that. And so far, this feels like a good, and I need things to be useful. I don't know how else to put it. I need things to be useful for me to be happy to do them. Okay, did you do your artist date this week? Have you been allowing workaholism or other commitments to sabotage this practice? What did you do? How did it feel? I read. And I've been really allowing myself to read. I've tried to replace almost all of my social media time. I read something the other day that said that the average person spends 90 minutes a day on TikTok. 90 minutes. And I mean, let alone like Instagram, Facebook, like all that stuff. So I have been trying really, really hard to spend like the random moments I have. I might have watched TV or looked on social media while I was eating lunch or waiting in the line somewhere or, bored somewhere. And instead I've been reading. I've been reading on my phone and I've been carrying my Kindle in my bag and I feel filled up. Did you experience any synchronicity this week? What was it? So I've been thinking a little bit about what synchronicity means, which is like that you open yourself up to something in the universe and then the universe comes through for you. Because I think I've been meaning it to mean more like coincidence, but I'm not sure. I will say this. I had okay. Maybe this is synchronicity. I've been wanting to sell more artwork, so I decided to list a bunch of artwork on Friday, and I sent it out to my newsletter subscribers, and I sold more than half the pieces that I listed, so that was fantastic. So is that synchronicity? I don't know, putting yourself out there and getting something back. I don't know. What do you think synchronicity is? And then the final question is, were there any issues this week that you consider significant for your recovery? Describe them. You can probably hear it in my nose. So I'm sick again. But other than having a cold again, because I always have a cold because I have a toddler in daycare. I don't know. I've been in a really generally good place. I feel like I've been seeing more friends. I've been making new friends. I don't know if that's so significant to my recovery as a creative or anything like that, but I feel more myself. Okay. So a couple sort of quick thoughts off the bat, which is I feel like I need personally to spend a little more time really drilling down and making sure I understand the definitions of everything. like, I really want to think about synchronicity and what that means according to Julia Cameron so that I can really either identify it or not. Because again, I think I'm still in a coincidence place with it, and I don't think that that's what it means. And just a couple of other terms like that to make sure, like when she talks about creative recovery. I think we've talked about this a little ad nauseum, which is she talking about the fact that you feel defeated and you come back for it, or is it a recovery, meaning like you're having a mental block? I don't know. I feel like I want to drill into those a little bit more and think about what those terms actually mean a little bit. So that's the thing for me. I will say that I do know, and I see a couple other people said this too, which is like Carol said that she expected more on how to use time more effectively or something like that. And I think that this gets back a little bit to the epiphany I had last week about that this book is a little bit more like intuitive painting, where it's a little more kind of seeing how you're feeling and being interior rather than practical ideas like if you want something high contrast, then you want to go across the color wheel. If you're looking for something that's more calming, then you probably want to go low contrast with two colors that are close to each other. This is more like paint the way you feel and your emotions and let it out. And I am more in the school of like understanding how things work and being able to do it, and less in the school of like letting my rage out in my work. Which again, it's not a good or a bad or a right or a wrong. It's just like a personality quirk. And my personality quirks more towards, I guess, usable, sort of useful knowledge or something like that. It makes me sound like a very dry person, doesn't it? Anyway, so I think I keep looking into this book for practical ideas and being frustrated that there aren't any, but that seems like a me problem because we're in week 8, you guys. If I keep expecting something to be there that isn't, that seems stupid. So I think what I've been trying to do, like when I've been writing blog posts for my own blog, is to pull out the practical knowledge for myself. What can I distill that's practical for me, And then I agree, Donna, the chapter title is Recovering a Sense of Strength. And then she says it's all about time. And then I don't kind of see either in the chapter, but maybe I'm missing the point. I see a lot of people don't do TikTok. Don't do TikTok. Absolutely. And this is a less of a how-to and more about our insides and our insights. Absolutely, Sherry. I think that's a great way to put it. It is a self-help book in the sense of like she's giving you exercises and ideas to kind of help yourself out, right? But it is less of a self-help book in the sense of giving you like a set of tasks for like making an art practice, I guess is the way that I would put it. And maybe that's a huge part of what I was thinking that this book was going to be about, was about a creative practice, which I suppose you could argue that the artist pages and the artist dates are part of a creative practice. But I think maybe I was looking for some more like granular, basic kind of, I don't know. Maybe I don't know what I'm looking for. Maybe I'm just lost in the woods. I don't know. There's something where there's a disconnect. But anyway, what can we take away from it is really the good big question, I feel like. Carol says maybe by time she's referring to the past, all the questions related to childhood. Yeah, I think that's a great insight, Carol, because definitely there's lots of stuff in here about it. I do want to say the following that I thought was really good about this chapter, which is, I'm just going to read this little bit. She says, the criticism that damages an artist is the criticism, well-intentioned or ill, that contains no saving kernel of truth, yet has a certain damning plausibility or an unassailable blanket judgment that cannot be rationally refuted. Teachers, editors, mentors are often authority figures or parent figures for a young artist. There is a sacred trust inherent in the bond between teacher and student. This trust, when violated, has the impact of a parental violation. And so I think she's talking a lot about how people get sort of like pushed down and really hurt by people who say things like, you'll never cut it, kid, or don't quit your day job, or I don't think you have the talent for this, or whatever else it is. And I think that is a dangerous thing. People, when I teach, often ask me to give them, feedback on their work. And I always find it an interesting thing because the most important thing I want to do is to encourage people, right? But I also want to make sure that I tell them something that they can work on as well, because I think that people, when they ask for criticism, are not asking for like a pat on the head, but they're also not asking for you to like totally rip them apart. They're just asking for like, what is one thing I could work on? And one of the things I do in my group coaching, right, is we talk a lot about the questions we can ask to get the answers we want, which I think is important too. Donna says, it is, as you said, a lot of the same concepts regurgitated, a lot of getting rid of things that hold you back, but life isn't that linear. That's so true. That's so true. And I do think that we all have to like learn some of these lessons over and over. And like, maybe you didn't get at it from one way, so you get at it from another way. I mean, you can talk about the same thing in therapy for weeks and weeks and weeks, right? I think you hit the nail on the head. What is wrong in our art lives? And we wanted a how do we fix it book. Yes. A one size fits all. How do we fix it book, please? I would like that very much. No one likes non-constructive criticism. It is not helpful and often coming from the giver's own issues. That's so true. That's so true. And I think like that's always the thing that's really hard, which is people are obviously colored, right, by their own point of view. So it's like, I even find in YouTube comments, people leave the weirdest comments sometimes where I think, wow, you logged in just to say something mean and took the time to do it. Like, what's wrong with you? I just don't get it. And then I remember, it says more about you than it does about me. And Sherry says practical applications. I am all about practical applications. And I know that about myself. I'm a very practical person. So I think that's why I keep trying to sort of distill some practical stuff out of here. Although it does say right here, Albert Einstein, a man far smarter than I, says right here, imagination is more important than knowledge. And I think in some ways that's true. I mean, I do want my doctor to have more knowledge than imagination, but perhaps when you are an artist, then imagination is more important than knowledge. I do remember, so my father was a professional photographer for a short period of time. When he was in law school, he took a photography class and you had to like basically kind of audition to get in. And when he looked around at like all the photographs that the other students had submitted, because these were mostly art students, the quality was fantastic. And his were kind of terrible quality and all that kind of stuff. But he got into the class and he asked the professor later why he had gotten into the class. And the professor said, essentially, you have a really good eye. He said, I can teach you how to develop film and a darkroom and all like the technical aspects, but it's hard to teach somebody to have a really good eye. And I've always remembered that because I think that there are certain things where you like instinctively understand or get certain concepts. And the idea is to nurture that and to remember that technical things like drawing, those can be taught. Technical things like grammar, technical things like, I mean, whatever that is, all that can be taught, but that spark, that imagination, that inner you-ness, do you know what I mean? Like that's the thing to be nurtured and pulled out. So, and I think at the end of the day, like that's what Julia Cameron is getting at, that she's trying to make you remember who you are. As Dr. Seuss said, right? Like no one is youer than you. And she's going back to childhood because so many of us got battered down along the way to adulthood and say like, who are you? What is the fire in you? What is the way that you see the world? What is the truest you that isn't doing kind of the right thing, the societal thing, the, constrained thing? I mean, so in the reading that I've been doing this week, I have read some Harlequin romance novels. And one of the things that is consistently true about them is these are women living in a rigid society, and almost always to find happiness, to find like their heart and all that stuff involves casting off the rigidity of society in some ways. It means going against expectations. It means being learned in a society that values, physical beauty. It means saying something you shouldn't say. It means marrying the person who's inappropriate. It means, all these things that are about sort of going against being bound. And I am reminded how often this tale of finding happiness once you go against what is expected of you is a tale that we hear like over and over. I mean, not just in Harlequin romances, but in all sorts of contexts. And so I have to wonder if there isn't a great yearning in people, all people in some way, to say, like, I don't want these strictures. I want to be me. And in a weird way, see if you can go here with me. In a weird way, I feel like the pandemic and the fact that we all like went inside our houses and stayed away from other people, and like the way that work is sort of like broke down in a lot of ways, the way that like families were changed, like something happened where it feels to me like there are so many fewer strictures than there used to be. There's a lot more like you be you, do what you want, do what feels good. Don't wear a bra, don't wear, pants that aren't elastic, don't wear heels, don't wear like, if you want to, like be yourself, like that's great. It feels to me that something has changed and loosened, which is really exciting. I mean, obviously not entirely and totally. But that's kind of a fun idea to think about, and what creativity came out of the pandemic, right? There were so many people who wrote songs and did comedy shows and wrote books and made art and turned to hobbies of all kinds of creativity. Because that's what they had to sort of channel their energy into. And so I am really curious to see, like 10 years down the line, what we kind of take with we, if this was like a left turn, or if it was just kind of a brief blip and we kind of get back onto where we were going. But yeah, there is something about this book that's about saying, like, let's stop thinking about who you're supposed to be, or who you think you're supposed to be, or even who you are now, but who you wanted to be when you were very little. And I think the pandemic did that to a certain extent too, because it was like, okay, you're not going to your job where you have 27 kinds of food in the fancy kitchen and you get all the perks, or that's near the, the downtown areas you like to go to. Like, people moved out of cities because they wanted more space. So maybe you didn't actually, you only liked like the city life, but you didn't like your apartment. I don't know. I'm rambling, but I just feel like the pandemic changed things. Donna says she agrees. The pandemic did give everyone more time for introspection. And Sherry says we had more time inside and less social time, more projects completed. It's so true. It reminds me a little bit of how they say, like, everyone who lives in Alaska has some sort of creative hobby, because they have, the period of time when it's just dark all the time and they're inside a lot because it's so cold. And so when that happens, you like, human beings want to be creative and turn towards creative pursuits, whatever they are, you know what I mean? Woodworking, sewing, quilting, painting, who knows what else it is. And so I think like that's such an interesting thing to me. I think we have a great desire to be creative. So I'll wrap up with one more quick story, because I can't help myself, which is, so I used to travel a lot for business, pre-baby, pre-pandemic. I would say I was on an airplane like, 3-4 times a month. And inevitably, I'm a chatty person. I like to chat with strangers. I would talk to the person next to me, and they would, of course, at some point say, like, what do you do? And I would say, I'm an artist. And then they would immediately say, oh, I'm not creative. And then by the end of the conversation, it would turn out that, in fact, they were creative. They had made some amazing Halloween costume, or they, loved some kind of like fancy baking, or they, made projects with their kids, or like there was always a way in which they were creative, but define themselves as not creative. And I think like that is the barrier that this book is dealing with. This book is dealing with the legions of people who say every day, I'm not creative. But they are. And it's about saying, like, you are creative, you always have been, like, stop doing that to yourself and get out of your head. And I think that that is important. And I just have to remember over and over again that in some ways the book is not targeted towards me right now, and I need to have an open mind about that. So I'm doing my best here. I think next week I'm going to try to define some of these terms for myself a little bit more, do what I like, which is pull out some practical applications and think about it. But I will say week 9 is called Recovering a Sense of Compassion. And so I'm really curious to see to see what that is going to be about. I assume it's going to be compassion with yourself. And then Sherry says, it seems the pandemic gave us the time to find out if we were creative. Absolutely. I think, and I hope that everybody found out that they are creative and maybe wanted to go a little bit deeper. Anyway, thank you so much for being here. I want you to know how much I appreciate you. I value these conversations and I look forward to them. I look forward to seeing you next Wednesday for this discussion. I can't believe we're on week 9. And then I just have to count on my fingers, 9, 10, 11. So we have 4 weeks left, 1 month, and we will have wrapped this book up. So, and I'm trying to think about what book to do for book club next. I think I need a palate cleanser. I need something with very clear instructions, something that's a practical how-to. Okay, I will see you next time. Have a great Wednesday. Bye.